I will not take much time. Sir, you please raise your hand when you want me to stop. So basically I will be talking like little bit, not much science, but how the climate change issue is popping up and what is the role of decentralized action plan, especially if you look at SDG goal number 30, that is climate action, that integrate all other SDG goals, all other 17 SDG goals is being integrated, can be connected to climate action. So basically I will be talking around that aspect. As an introduction, we know that the climate change science is a detection attribution science, because we have to, it is an indicator based science, because we have to observe the earth and we have to find out what are the indicators which is making the change. So for that we need a lot of observations. So and then finding out that indicators, then we have to attribute how it is changing. And based on that indicator attributor studies, we have to analyze what are the impacts. Based on that impacts, we have to either adapt to that or in the long term we have to mitigate. That is what the climate change assessment cycle is all about. But we have to understand what is happening. In terms of climate change, basically homogeneously what we are observing is the rising temperature. We know that global average temperature is around 1.2 degrees Celsius, warmer than the pre-industrial period of baseline period of around 1850 to 1900. So that is what the present status of global warming, and even 2023 it should have around, anomaly was around 2 degrees in 2023 November. That is what being said that IPCC was envisaging that this should happen maybe after 30-40 years between 2040 and 2050, but that happened earlier than that. So that is what things are happening very fast, and then most of the visible thing is in terms of changes in the hydrological cycles. Because if you look at hydrological cycles, that each component of hydrological cycle is getting accelerated, especially due to global warming, the sea surface warming, the atmospheric warming connected to that increased evaporation, increase in the rate of condensation and transport of this bulk of water to the land, and the surface runoff is being increased over the years. So that the rainfall or the water is getting running through all these spheres and it is getting accelerated. And then another thing is the sea level rise, that is putting a lot of pressure, especially on the coastal communities where for that we know that Indonesia recently shifting the capital city from Jakarta to Borneo. So this is how the coastal communities are getting a lot of impact due to that, especially the pure indigenous people. And the climate change, the sea level rise along with other extreme sea level conditions, like for example, sea level is rising at a rate of around 3 millimeters per year, but it is projected to rise by around 50 to 100 centimeters, 50 to up to 1 meter. It's a global average, but we can see that may witness it may be between around 60 centimeters to 80 centimeters based on different future scenarios. We can see that along with that, if any storm is coming, storm surge can also put pressure, water pressure, like it can increase the height of the water level to even like 2.5 to 3 meters. Along with that, that together is having some kind of big impact on the coastal cities. So these are some of the visible indicators when we talk about climate change, and its impact is widespread, because that we can witness in every aspect. Like globally, the weather pattern is getting changed. More drought prone areas are getting more flooded, like Middle East regions and European countries. They are getting more frequent extreme rainfall events in the recent times, and also Canada, like European countries, Canada and European countries, they are also frequently witnessing the heat wave conditions as well. So that the global weather pattern is getting shifted, and then the water cycle, as already I said, due to that water quality, quantity, everything is getting deteriorated. Then the air quality is also another problem, and ecosystem level changes. That is what the previous two speakers were largely talked about, the ecosystem level changes. Because if you look at any ecosystem, it is functioning as a response to climate parameters, especially rainfall and temperature. Any ecosystem, starting from a small pond all the way to big rich rainforest or the desert ecosystem, they are functioning based on the two functions determines the ecosystem. That is, one is rainfall, another is temperature. These two parameters are changing, so the ecosystem is also getting a lot of pressure. That is what article regarding the ocean ecosystem. Anu madam has already discussed about part of it. But and due to that, there are many things are happening in the biodiversity level where species are either getting migrated or getting extinct due to all this climate changes. So these are some of the and that basically affect our goal number SDG goal number 2, the food security. And so in a nutshell, if you look at the socio-economic impact of climate change, there are multi-dimensional, like the cost of adapting to this coastal issues is getting increased, and then the loss of work due to heat stress, because any heat stress event, it is projected that heat stress work-related loss will be like billions of working days per year, maybe in the near future. So, and another thing is that more gain to access to limited resources. Most of the war is because of the new way to find out resources. It is not for the one reason behind most of the wars is getting more resources and looking for more resources. So these are some of, if you look at the urban areas, our urban cities, because last Monday was the World Habitat Day. This year's World Habitat Day theme was Urban Crisis and Response, where you have to integrate. Equity-based response has to be integrated, because most of the climate change issues has to deal with a lot of equity in terms of because the worst impact of climate change is being affected the most vulnerable people, like the marginalized and less privileged people. So that we have to understand, and we have to address that problem. So this is why if you look at the urban issues itself, we can see that a lot of urban floods are happening around the world, because most of our urban cities are designed for very low rainfall, like rainfall intensity duration curve. If you look at it, is designed for very low intensity rainfall. But nowadays, Middle East, UAE countries, they are also getting a lot of flooding. So they are going to implement new plan for their urban cities, and then the urban heat island effect, because along with the heat waves, the urban heat island effect also putting a lot of pressure in the urban ecosystem, and then water air pollution, cyclonic storm, extreme sea level rise. So these are some of the other issues related to urban area, the loss of natural habitats, and then the agricultural land. Most of the urbanization, the urban agglomeration is happening by encroaching towards the agricultural land. That is also putting a lot of pressure in the ecosystem, and also fragmentation to a large extent, then environmental degradation. And if you look at the global scenario, the global warming is a kind of byproduct of fossil-driven industrial revolution and capitalistic development. It's a byproduct of fossil-driven capitalistic development. In that, the US alone contributed more than 30 to 40% of the cumulative carbon to the atmosphere. So that is a global scenario. And if you look at the global scenario of the most of the per capita emission, we can find that US comes around per capita emission in US is around 18 tons per person per year, and then India comes around, only global average is around 4.4 tons per year, but India something around 2.53. So that we are well below the global average. So if you look at that, most of the African, Asian, Middle East and South Asian countries also lying in the very lower line. So if you look at the most of the disasters, there comes the inequality lies. Where if you rank most of the disasters in terms of death, we can find that if you rank 10 of the most disasters in terms of death, we can find that it all comes from underdeveloped countries or developing worlds like Ethiopia, Bangladesh, Sudan, and droughts, with disasters like droughts, storms, floods. These are some of the, all are coming from less privileged countries. So it costs around 3 lakhs to 1.5 lakhs of people's life in single disasters. So, and when we count this in the other way, like economic loss, we can find that US comes in the first 6 position, where starting from 2005, Katrina, Wilma, Rita, Maria, all these hurricanes all together put their US economy in a big hurdle, like trillions of US dollar loss happened in just 3-4 disasters. So this is where the inequality lies, and that is why if you largely speaking about the climate injustice, because climate crisis, because climate change is not putting any crisis to the social system. We can say that climate change in terms of extreme weather events, they are nothing but flood, drought, sea levels, all these climate crises exist, but there are social inequality lies in our social economic spectrum, where the disadvantaged groups, for example, disabled people, low-income people and countries, children, gender inequality, and elderly people, they are the disadvantaged groups and classes. They are more susceptible to this type of climate-related risk. So then disadvantaged places, because nowadays the hazard, due to climate change, the extreme events are getting more widespread. Not only intense, it is getting more widespread. So that the total exposure of this hazard is being increased over the years. That is why more and more people, more and more places are getting exposed to this type of climate events. That is why we can say that more people are disadvantaged, more places are getting prone to this type of disasters. And then policy delivery areas, where we know that starting from the global to local scenario, there is no way in which we can distribute the wealth on an equity basis. So that is one another issue. So these are some of the issues already existing in our social system as a social inequality. When this climate crisis merges with the social injustice, already existing social inequality, we can say it as a climate injustice, because climate change alone cannot put any crisis to the system. It will aggravate the already existing social inequality or social injustice. And if you look at the total risk from the climate change, we can there is a famous, this equation is very famous, and it is well debated equation as well. The risk is a function of hazard, vulnerability, exposure, and inversely proportional to the coping capacity of the community. And with the climate change, we can say that not only the hazard is increasing, all the other part of the risk in terms of hazard, exposure and vulnerability is also getting increased. So that means with the climate change, we are getting more hazard, both in frequency, spatial extent, and also intensity. This is about the hazard itself, and that due to that, more people and asset is getting exposed. And that is why, if you look at this last COP, the Conference of Parties, the main decision was on loss and damage fund, where the developed countries already realized that they have the main culprit in putting this old carbon emission to the atmosphere for their economic development. Due to that, the low-income countries are suffering. So, because this is a kind of acceptance for that, and they decided to collect kind of 500 million to $1 trillion every year to give to the developing nations to cope up with because for their climate resilience, for the adaptation and mitigation activities. So this is one thing, and in that, the most of the loss and damage fund is going towards developing early warning systems, where if you look at 2015, only 50% of the countries were having the access to better early warning system. But now, if you look at more than 120 countries are having that ability or the access to better early warning system. So it is mainly because of the global support. So, and this is where because we have to cope up with this is that we have to make better early warning system. That is the technology we have to adapt. And if you look at the total spectrum, how the risk drivers are related to the climate change, we can ask, already I mentioned about climate change can add pressure to both hazard, exposure, vulnerability, but the land use and urbanization also equally put exposure to the hazard. And at the same time, environmental degradation also create a lot of vulnerability. So this all together is causing the problem. It is not the climate change alone, because other aspects like land use changes, urbanization, environmental degradation, accumulation, all this together is acting, and that is making the most of the risk more. So this is about the exposure. Already I mentioned about that. And another thing is thing regarding the exposure is that asset concentration, because people are largely migrating toward the urban cities, and urban cities are expanding to a large extent. So that population growth is one of the main drivers, which is driving people, forcing people to go move towards other urban areas, and then for their economic and other activities. And then another thing is that exposure changes over time and place, so that is also important. And that is why large volume of people asset is being concentrated in particular, that is concentrated in particular area where it is more prone to more assets. So that is why asset in terms of value it is getting increased. And in order to avoid that, what we can do is that we have to use better spatial land use planning and structural and non-structural measures like nature-based solution along with the green, green hard infrastructure. All this can be attempted. And the drivers of vulnerability, when it comes to vulnerability aspect of which is basically it is driven by the physical and social system. Physical is nothing but the pure design, construction of buildings, unregulated land use planning. And when it comes to social, it is poverty, inequality, marginalization, social exclusion, discrimination by gender, social status. So all this comes as to aggravate the vulnerability, and then the economic aspects of this, and then environmental aspect of this vulnerability. So each one we have to the purely managed development, that is the main cause of it. And how we can reduce the vulnerabilities, there is no single solution, but there are many ways by which you can reduce the vulnerability to large extent by acting upon the implementing building codes, insurance and social protection schemes, emphasizing economic diversity and resilient livelihoods, because most of these vulnerable people, they are depending on single income, single livelihood. If they have multiple livelihood options, like for example fishing community or farming community, if in the time of extreme weather events, if they have alternate income from other livelihood, that would be another way of coping up with the reducing the vulnerability in terms of their economic loss or the social. So then the knowledge and awareness creation, preparedness and measures. So these are some of the things we can. So now if you come to the disaster point of view, we can say that this is one of the way by which Kerala is witnessing for the last few years. If you look at the accumulation of rainfall, we can see that in a single day during May we received in the Cochin city we received around 20 centimeters of rain in single day. So and 3 days together we got around 45 centimeters of rain. That 45 centimeters of rain is nothing, is almost like a monsoonal type of rain in which we are expecting for June month alone. So that means that even from the pre-monsoon time itself, our cities are getting flooded. So and that induces a lot of issues. Why this is happening? We have some studies on that. Because if you look at most of these clouds are forming in Southeast Arabian Sea, the blue color represents very deep type of clouds. This is satellite data. So when these clouds approach the land, that is the main reason why this rainfall is getting more concentrated or short wave. And due to that, if you look at the Southeast Arabian Sea, earlier clouds are very shallow, like they are not extending only up to 5 to 6 kilometers during monsoon season. Now they are extending up to 14, 15 kilometers in height. That is putting a lot of other issues. Not only, it is not limited to rainfall alone. Nowadays, if you look at Kerala, this monsoon year, we have witnessed a lot of wind gust events, like that took almost crores of rupees damage to the KSEB and also the agriculture sector. So along with that, this heavy rain, there is a problem of wind gust and also lightning hazard is also getting increased. So these are some of the, and cyclonic storms, if you look at the cyclonic storms, earlier 2 decades, 80 to 2000, there were few number of cyclones in the Arabian Sea. Now in the recent 2 decades, we can see that there are distribution of cyclones in the Arabian Sea is as that of Bay of Bengal. And it is not only the number, the intensity of this cyclone is also increasing. So this is also putting a lot of pressure. This is a cyclone which came closer to Kerala coast, that is OK cyclone, that took almost like 400 plus pure fisherman lives at the sea. So that is also one of the cyclone. If you look at the distribution, this is what I already mentioned, that our region, the Kottayam region, is more susceptible to the lightning activities. This is one of recent paper which is going to be published. So there are triple threats from this type of deepening of the cloud system. So, and also there are multiple and compound effect. This is another case of top type cyclone which was not even close the Kerala coast, but it formed close to Lakshadweep and moved all the way up to Gujarat. But that time, this is the scene from the Chellam and Vipin area where the coastal community is facing a lot of issues due to water inundation to their homes and land. So in another place called in Ernakulam district, there is another Uttambedikara, there is a place, they are perennially under the threat of this tidal flooding. So in the presence of sea level rise, it is a storm surge, along with tidal flooding, that making a lot of pressure in their social system, especially the most vulnerable, gender-wise vulnerable categories. And this urban heat island effect is increasing. So this is what this is the projection of number of heat wave days exposed to the billion heat wave days exposed for the projection. Maybe the low income countries, the people are more exposed in the future. So that is also a kind of inequality. And the air pollution is also increasing. This is another air pollution event which happened in Brahmapuram. So where pollution started from here, and due to wind it dispersed all the way in the Arabian Sea. And the other event, the wind was in the easterly, distributed on the opposite side. So these are some of the issues which we are facing in the urban cities of Kerala. So it's the urban cities and not only urban cities, Kerala as a whole is becoming a kind of multi-hazard weather-prone area where we have to adapt to the situation. Only way to adapt is globally is the climate action, which is the goal number 13, which connect all other SDG goals. But in terms of what is the main objective of climate action is nothing but the emission reduction, that is for the longer period, and the adaptation, that is for shorter. For example, early warning system development is a kind of adaptation, and then the community engagement, that is more important, because if you want to tackle this issue, you have to make sure that the communities are getting involved in this policy making and governance system. Otherwise, if there is no voice of the people, we cannot make a solution for them, because as Sir was telling, the problem is global, but the reality which is happening at local. So you have to act locally. So how we can act locally is by bringing the local community into the decision-making process. So that is what the climate action, the local planning is very much important, decentralization is very much important. So that is where we have synergy between both mitigation and adaptation. On the mitigation side, mostly on the clean energy, low emission technologies, carbon capture technologies, but on the adaptation side, it is mostly on the emergency disaster preparedness and land use planning. So this together has to be in synergies with a lot of activities. But if you look at if we invest $1.6 trillion for early warning system, we will get almost like 6.4 trillion. We can avoid 6.4 trillion value in terms of disasters. So that's why if you look at the global spectrum of the disaster, you can see that the disasters are increasing, but the death rate is decreasing because of the well-integrated early warning system, where we can say this is the last slide where if you want to make a functioning early warning system, we have to make sure that it should be people-centric, where there are 3-4 parts of it. It is a well-known diagram where the risk knowledge is the first leg of any kind of people-centric early warning system, where the people has to have the knowledge of what are the risks they are going to face in the future, where education, awareness, all these programs comes. When other leg is monitoring and warning, it is like a 4 leg of a chair, where all this, if 4 legs are strong, then only the chair will stand. Otherwise, if you any one of this leg, if it is weak, it will collapse. That is why the monitoring warning, that is also we have to make sure that better early warning systems are accessible to these low-income countries and less privileged people. And then the dissemination and communication, that media and communication channels should be very accurate. They should not create any kind of bogging or any kind of anxiety to the people. And then the response capability that has to be there. Most of the government mechanism has to play a bigger role. So this is where the people-centric early warning system and action is very, very important in terms of climate action in all aspects. And I was told, this is a last slide. For climate resilience, there is no single capsule or single solution. There is multiple ways by which we have to address. It is basically the convergence of different aspects, including the governance, innovative ideas, risk reduction technologies, and operational sustainability, including policy, governance, inclusivity, and SDG goals, equity, nature-based solution, and innovation. Both together, if converged, then only we can make a more climate equity, where all will have the access to most of the data and the resources. So this is a way by which we have to address the climate change issue in a more equity way. This is where I stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abhilash, for that presentation. Any questions, please?
Recently, in the ocean side, El Nino effect makes significant ocean currents, and of course, a recent climate change in Kerala. Can you comment on this El Nino?
Yeah, I know. But El Nino is a global climate pattern. It is happening in the Pacific, but it has got connection to not only to Kerala. All the global climate is being modulated with El Nino. Similarly, Kerala is also affected. Like if you examine 2015, the largest coral bleaching happened. Not only in Kerala side, the Australian side also happened in 2015. That was the biggest El Nino that time. And recently also, during El Nino 2023, 22, that period also, a lot of that means ocean. So there's another concept called marine heat waves. The heat waves is also happening in the ocean as well, because bulk of this excess heat which we are dumping to the atmosphere, 93% of this is being absorbed by the ocean. So that ocean heat content is increasing. That is making more and more cyclones more intense. So El Nino definitely have a global connection to the all weather pattern. In Kerala also it has a link. But it is more established in terms of monsoon rainfall. That too is in a all India level monsoon rainfall. We cannot pinpoint that locally what is happening is due to El Nino or not. That's very difficult. That attribution is very, very difficult.
From all your research, do you have any idea if we were to stop everything that we're doing right today, okay, everything that we're doing, reverse what we're doing, how long would it take for the Earth to recover?
Oh, that is a theoretical question. We cannot stop all the activities all in a sudden, right? We cannot stop all the energy we are using. We cannot stop that. So I don't have an exact answer for that, but Earth knows the way by which it can heal. So that's how it has done over the historically. If you look at the large history of 4.56 billion years of Earth's history, Earth know how to modulate things. There's a famous poem, Bhumikku Charamagikam. So that means Earth will not die. We may not be here, but Earth will sustain for another maybe 4-5 billions of years. Unless and until solar energy is coming, there's no much big changes in the climate pattern. So it is not in our hand. If you stop, it is okay, it is good. But even if we are stopping or not stopping, Earth will have its own way to respond. That's why there is global boundaries, planetary boundaries. We can do our business within that boundary. So that is the sustainable region. So if we go beyond that, there is a mechanism by which it can be.
I asked the question because I just think that it's important for our students here who are going to be facing the huge consequences of climate change more than I certainly am. And I'd just like to offer them a message of hope, and maybe you have something to say, something hopeful to say to the students at the university in order to give them the encouragement and the drive to want to overcome this situation. Have you anything to say to them?
Yeah, because humans have the ability to come up with solutions, right? I am in line with that, because it's not just about the technology can save the entire thing. It is a combination of technology and nature-based solution which can solve. So that is why we are here, because climate change is a challenge and it is putting a lot of pressure. But at the same time, we have to convert all these challenges into opportunities, because if you look at the global emission spectrum, we can say that 72% of the emission is for energy production. So where in terms of transportation, building, or the industry. But nowadays we have various other mechanisms by which we are depending on the renewable energy sources, and also ocean is coming up, because ocean-based renewable energy is coming up as a better alternative. So humans know how to respond to this. That is why the nature of the humanity is like that. You have to respond in a positive way. You have to take this as an opportunity rather than saying like, you have to respect the nature and understand the functioning of the nature, and then we use effectively we use our technologies and innovation to keep our system running for years. Maybe when we talk about because we are talking about everything in a anthropocentric way. So that is what the problem. So it is not just a human. We are the last species. See, that is what you should understand. Even without us also, Earth will flourish. So that is what my aim in a long time. But short time we don't understand.
I think that's a good, on a good note to end it, on a hopeful note. So thank you very much indeed, Dr. Abhilash.
We now have the honor of presenting a token of appreciation to Dr. S. Abhilash. I request Dr. James P. Graham, Chair of the session, to kindly present it. Now I request Dr. Mahesh Mohan, coordinator of the conference, to present a token of appreciation to Dr. James P. Graham for chairing this session.